When the state government extended the boundaries of Melbourne by 6,000 hectares this week, it made a solemn promise. No longer would vast housing estates be built on the city fringes without proper public transport and infrastructure. But environmentalists and some planning experts are highly sceptical, and they're raising questions about the power and influence wielded by big developers. Danny Morgan reports.
It's 7:30 in the morning at the South Morang train station car park, and commuters are scrambling to get the last few spaces.
There's 12 car park spaces left, and it's not even 8 o'clock yet.
It fills up about this time every day.
It won't cope very well once the outer estates start to fill up.
The station in Melbourne's outer north is less than 2 months old and cost almost $500 million. But its facilities are already bursting at the seams.
If I was late by another 10 minutes, then I don't know, I have to go back home, then walk to the bus stand, catch a bus and come here. I'll be late by another 1.5 hours.
In recent years, the huge new housing estates going up in Melbourne's north have crept well past South Morang. So it's hardly surprising the new train station has become so popular so soon.
It was planned to be here in 2003, so 8 years later, of course, it's just going to have people flocking to it.
Rapid development around Melbourne's fringes, particularly areas like South Morang and Point Cook to the west, has left successive governments struggling to ease massive pressure on existing roads and railway stations. That's why the state government's decision to extend Melbourne's urban growth boundaries this week raised eyebrows.
It really is nuts for a city like Melbourne that is faced with all kinds of transformational challenges with regard to climate change and low carbon cities to be spreading further out, more sprawl, more suburbs.
But the government says any new suburbs will be properly planned, with critical infrastructure delivered on time.
That will add to those suburbs' livability and provide transport solutions at the time of development rather than after their development.
Councils struggling to cope with poor planning in the past are not convinced the promise will hold.
The culture here in Victoria and to a large extent Australia over the last 30 years in particular has been to wait for the build-up of almost a crisis before the heavy or trunk infrastructure gets put in.
And there's others who can't see why the government is extending Melbourne's growth boundaries when the Brumby Labor government opened up 40,000 hectares a few years back.
We have a government whose planning policies are driven by developers. That's the pure and simple thing.
Developers buy up on a speculative basis all of the land, the basically agricultural land surrounding the city, and then they have an interest then in lobbying and indeed in donating to different political parties, not just the Liberals, in order to lobby to get that growth boundary extended. When it is, of course, there's a windfall profit that goes to those developers.
Australia's largest residential developer, Stockland, rejects any suggestion it buys influence.
We don't make any political donations, and we do enjoy a strong working relationship with all levels of government and need to if we're going to deliver on the aspirations of creating these strong and sustainable communities that are around in perpetuity. They require these strong partnerships.
Developers also question calls from environmentalists and academics to focus on inner urban development rather than continue the outer suburban sprawl.
The reality is not everybody wants to live in an apartment or a townhouse in the inner or middle ring, and they can't afford it. What we're seeing is a lot of people want to live in the new master plan communities where they can get access to a lot of the community services and facilities that they demand.
The city of Whittlesea, which includes South Morang, is Australia's second fastest growing council region, with 70,000 new residents expected in the next decade. Its chief executive, David Turnbull, says that means there is strong demand for new housing and not just because of the lower prices.
There are people, because of the natural characteristics of our area, proximity to activity centres and employment, that actually want to live in our growth areas.
He says the state government should plan for future demand, but it must devote more money to developing proper services to those estates already being built.
But what they don't have is the higher order items such as train stations, such as universities. They've basically got to get in their car and drive long distances on relatively substandard roads.
Back at South Morang train station, those hoping for the line to be extended further north certainly agree.
They probably should have foreseen this situation, I think, given the population explosion around here.
Even though it is absolute disaster at the moment with traffic, it is going to be literally twice as bad by 2016.